Hi, this is another video in this series of teaching you how to use Scribus. In this video, I'm going to show you how to work with text in Scribus. So we start again with creating a new document, and for purposes of this exercise, I want to include a document that has more than one page, so I increase the number here to 2 and click on OK, and then we get our standard a template here. Now what I want to do is insert a text frame, and typically when we work with a text document in Scribus, we work in columns. So I'm going to make each page have 2 columns. So I scroll down here and insert this column, and of course I can extend it to the bottom of the page, and then I can do the same thing with the second column, or I can right click and I can do a copy, and then over here do a paste, and I will have a second column that is exactly the same size as the first. Now let's go to page 2 and do exactly the same thing. I do paste, position, paste, and position. So now I've got 2 pages with 4 columns. Now, as you can see, working with Scribus for text is not the same thing as working with a word processor. We do need to create these frames first. We can't just start typing information onto a document without first creating a frame. Alright, now once we've got our frames, there are several different ways that we could enter text. One is just by simply double clicking on the frame we want to enter text and then just start typing. This is an example of entering data directly into a frame. Alright, so what's one of the things that you notice here immediately when you see this data? There are no controls up here to tell you how to format that data. So typing data directly into a frame is not necessarily the best way of doing it, but it is a way of doing it if you need to enter data quickly. Now, we can go back and highlight this and then click on F2 or right click and go to properties, and then we do get some control of uh, our text here. We can click on the text bar, and now you can see I can choose the font that I want to use. So let's choose something uh, strange. I can change it to bold or italics or bold and italics. I can also change the point size. So all the things that you would normally expect to be able to do in a word processing program up here in the menu bar is controlled down here in the properties bar. And we also can do our typical alignment things: left align, center, right. So let's center this. We also can add in colors and effects, and these of course look familiar to you or similar to what's in a word processing program, and the other buttons here that we have. So we'll go over this in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. Alright, another thing that you could do is get rid of this text, and you could bring up the storyboard. Story editor. So what you can do again is right click and then look for the uh, edit text, click on that, and it will open up the story editor. The story editor will look a little familiar to you in that it kind of looks like an HTML editor. It gives you all kinds of flexibility in entering text directly into a frame. So this is got quite a lot of capability, so I'm going to create a separate video for using Story Editor. Another and perhaps the most common way of getting text into a text frame in Scribus is to import the text from another source. So to do that, we right click again and we click on Get Text. And when I do that, I get a Windows browser window that asks me to find the text that I want to import. Now what I want to show to you are the types that Scribus supports. So CSV is a type from Excel. Doc. Notice it's doc and not docx. That means that Scribus only supports importing from Windows 97 2003 version, the .doc version. It does not support newer versions from Windows, from Word. We also can have HTML and ODT from OpenOffice, PDB and SXW, which we're not going to worry about right now, and then a simple plain text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a Word document into this program by clicking on the file, clicking OK, and my document loads into the first frame. Now, I'll show you what the original document looked like. It looked like this. This is just text from a lecture that I wrote. I purposely chose it because it does not have a lot of formatting, but it does have some formatting so that you can see what happens when you import from Word. The formatting is not always appropriate. So you see here we have meetings and then indents here and then subsequent here. If we go back to Scribus, you see that the meetings is in the wrong place. So one way to fix that would be to just reposition it manually, and now it's okay looking. But then the other thing you noticed in my original document is I had text underlined, and the underlining did not come over into the Scribus text frame. As a matter of fact, most of the formatting will not come over from Word. So you need to be careful about that. The less formatting you have, the better. And that's why a lot of people just use plain text, because there is no real formatting that will be used over there. All right, so anyway, we have some text here. Now, you'll notice that there's a little icon here at the bottom. That's telling me that I've got more text than what is being displayed in this frame. So let's link our remaining columns so that the text flows from column 1 to column 2 to column 3 and column 4. To do that, we click on the first text frame, and then up here in the tool icon bar, you see the link text frames icon, and it's green, indicating that we have the ability to link. So I click on that, and then I go to the frame that I want to link, and you see I've got a link tool here. So when I click on that, these two columns are now linked, and you'll see that my text continues now to flow into the second column. Now I can go to the next page, and you see that I've already linked these previously, so the text continued to flow from page to column 3 and column 4. Now, likewise, if I want to unlink a column or a page, what I can do is click on the frame I want to unlink, then click on the unlink frames icon here, and then click on the frame that I want to unlink from, and you'll see now that those frames are no longer linked. Now let's just quickly go through all of the remaining items that are on the context menu. Again, we can get to the context menu by right-clicking. So when I do that, you see information is available, such as tells me how many paragraphs I have and how many lines, words, and characters in the text that I'm working with. I can do the undo here, just as I can up here in the edit menu. Get text we've already covered. Append text. What append text does is if you already have text in your frames and you want to add additional text to the end, when you click on append text, it will do the same thing as get text. It will import text from a file, but it will place it at the end of the frames wherever the last position is. Edit text, we've already gone over. The same thing as double clicking in a frame. You can also do from the context menu or from using Control T. Sample text is interesting. It's something that you've probably seen before. I went to a blank frame so I could show this to you. Sample text just puts text into your frame here. So I'm going to just click on English, and then you see that there's some sample text that was just put in here for purposes a of showing you formatting. All right, if you want to get rid of that text, then you can go to contents clear. Now this is going to clear everything, not just what I just inserted. So it's going to give you a warning message. And then if we go back to page 1, you see that our content is still there for uh, what we saved before, but it's not there for what we just recently inserted. All right, then the other things that we have on here, PDF we're not going to worry about. It's locked, means you can lock the frame so it can't be moved around. Um, some of these others we're not going to go into yet. Level refers to layers, which we haven't covered yet. Um, then we also have the standard cut, copy, and delete. And then finally we have the properties menu, which we've gone over quickly, but let's go back and look at it in a little bit more detail. Okay, I mentioned earlier in the lecture about font and style and font size, and we can change the fixed line, in other words, the spacing between lines here. So for example, if I wanted to change this to a smaller size or a larger size, you can see what's happening to the line spacing there. And now I want to look at color and effects. Here we can set the color of you could move the property box over here a little bit so we can see more, see things better over here this way. All right, so the color here is indicating the color of the text. So it's black. We could make it gray by changing the opaqueness here. I'm not going to do that. And then of course you can also change the background. What's important here are these symbols underneath here. Now remember in my original report I had some some information that was underlined. So I could highlight initial audience, and then I can put back the underlining that was there before by clicking on the U. And now I have my text underlined as it was before. So again, I could do that with all the items that lost the formatting when we brought it over from Word. All right, if you hover over these mouse items, you'll see what they are. Um, Here's an example of underlying words only. You see in my underlines here, it underlined the space as well. So it's two different options for underlining. Then we also have subscript, superscript, all caps, small caps, strikeout, outline, shadow text, and right to left writing. All of these I think you probably are familiar with from using Word. In style settings, we can set different things like such as paragraph style, or in this case we want to do a character style. So we could do, say, default character style is only our option here. We could add additional options if we wanted to, but we don't have any set up right now, so we don't have to worry about that. Then we also have first line offset. This tells us how much space between the first line and the top of the frame, so we can experiment with that if we want. Column and text distances, we can set the number of columns on the page and the margins, and then how much of a gap is between columns. I did that manually by using separate text frames, but you could do that automatically here as well, adding columns to the frame. All right, the next thing that we can look at are the optical margins. Optical margins come in handy when we have a line that ends in a punctuation mark or a line that begins with a punctuation mark. Scrolling through here, see if we have any that are causing a problem. No, I don't see any. The thing is, if lots of times when a punctuation mark comes at the end of a line or at the beginning of a line, it causes the other characters to get squeezed in a little bit, and it causes problems with alignment. So you can use um, optical margins, as you see on both sides, on the left margin and the right margin only. And what it does is it allows the punctuation mark to go a little bit into the frame's margin so that the characters better line up and that squishing doesn't occur. Then we have the advanced settings, which are similar to the advanced settings in Word, where we can play with things such as the change the baseline of a line, or we can do some scaling of the width of the characters, or work on the height of the characters. We could turn on word tracking so that we manually control the width of the spaces between words. And that is something that is a little bit more advanced, so we're not going to cover that in this class.